Hey, remember when I said I was going to release shorter scripted content? I mean, this is kind of shorter, right? Anyway, the idea for this video started when I was looking through some Starter Squad art, and a comment under some of the art reminded me of Starters by MovieUnleashers. And it had been a while since I'd seen it, so I decided to check it out, and oh my god, it's genuinely life-changing. Okay, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but no joke, this series has so much to say, and I loved it so much that, sure, I'll dedicate another however many minutes long video to this. Leading me here! Also, I'm doing this ranking Schaeferless style as opposed to LS Mark style because I can and because I want to. But I decided that wasn't long enough, so I decided to include all of the side content. No, I'm not including test animations for obvious reasons, and no, I'm not including Waiting List because that is a Dragon Dane short, different series. Or Boutique Bootleg Brain Rot / Dopo Gets Content Farmed for the same reason. Anyway, now that everything's been clarified, let's we go, amigo! By the way, did you see a new Rhythm Heaven is releasing? Oh my god, I'm so excited for
disappointment in the game of life!
Hey, did you guys know that I really like the Detective Pikachu games? I mean, I know they're not the best games ever, but I think they're really fun and interesting with an engaging enough plotline. This is absolute garbage. Detective Pikachu shows the worst of what this series could have been. Poorly done Pokemon parodies filled with cheap humor and annoying characters, and one singular branching idea from a Pokemon concept. There was only one idea here that made me think, that's kind of interesting, and that is that it was their hats that made their personalities. Too bad it's the last plot point of the episode, and wouldn't have even been able to carry the episode even if it was introduced at the start. The Noir Detective Pikachu does nothing except add a character for the Colored Detective Pikachu to bounce off of, and the Colored Detective Pikachu is annoying as shit. Something they acknowledge in the episode. Wow, I'm so glad that you're proud of your annoying as fuck character. Thanks for making it clear that you're aware of this problem and don't intend on changing it. Anyway, the Colored Detective Pikachu, which I really don't like calling him, but anyway, that Pikachu's job is to basically just make sure this isn't a boring noir. But I would have preferred a boring noir to what we got because at least then it would have had a plot. Because there is no plot here. It sets up a murder mystery, the two Detective Pikachus meet, they both go into the interrogation room, and that's where the rest of the 6 minutes left takes place. I am genuinely shocked and appalled that we spend 6 minutes of this 10-minute video in a dark room with a chair cracking lame jokes. They don't even land once. I kept waiting for things to start, but they never did. They don't even have a funny dynamic. Like, I could excuse the lack of a plot if it at least had, like, a message, or if it was funny. This has neither. It feels like nothing. I guess the most I can give it is that it's a critique on fourth wall breaks, but even that's a stretch, and if you want a critique on fourth wall breaks, then Lavender Town Retold DVD, whatever the fuck, works way better as that, even though it's also saying stuff about, like, DVD reviews or whatever the fuck. Point is, there is, like, nothing here. The only other character in this entire animation is Blaziken, who's not really been a character since fucking Ditto Disaster, and to be fair, they were good in that, but still, this episode has literally nothing to do with any of the ongoing plot lines and starters, which I'm fine with. It's completely chill wanting to branch out. I'm just saying that for this particular episode, it's hurting its case because there's no other reason to ever watch it. It's not for people who are fans of Detective Pikachu because it has basically nothing to do with Detective Pikachu. It's not for people who are fans of MovieUnleashers because the humor and story are a shell of their usual selves, and it's not for people who are fans of starters because this has nothing to do with starters. The only people I can see getting enjoyment out of this are people who unironically like Brickleberry. Okay, no, that's a little harsh, never mind. But ultimately, I understand that this episode was made around the time that people were absolutely begging for MovieUnleashers to make more starters, and boy golly gee, did he give it to them in the worst way possible. Keep in mind, I included the unaired, unfinished pilot in this list, and it's still ranked higher than this piece of fuck. It's not a piece of media that makes me mad, per se. Really, I've been exaggerating for the camera this whole time. But it's a piece of media that makes me feel completely, utterly bored and frustrated every time I watched it. I don't think anything could have saved it. I was this close to not putting it on the list because I didn't want to start off on such a negative note. But I assure you, things exponentially get better from here. Speaking of, let's move on. I'm tired of talking about this shit.
Camera shoots 1 frame at a time, so all we gotta do is put the right mouth on, according to what syllable they're pronouncing at that frame. Easy!
The unaired pilot of Starters, A Christmas Thing, is weird, but it's also very historical and, dare I say, cute.
I don't know, Mario, you're looking kind of cute.
Obviously, because this turned into Ditto Disaster, it has a lot of the same ideas as Ditto Disaster, but in a lot of different ways. In particular, the principal character that appears in this pilot is completely gone in the finished product, which is a good thing, knowing what Lugia being the only legendary ended up leading to. Ultimately, there's not very many good things in this pilot, but first of all, there's a lot of novelty, and second of all, as I said, it's just really charming. Sure, a lot of stuff didn't age well, something we'll see repeat when we get to Ditto Disaster, but like, man, it's just adorable. You can tell that there was so much passion put into this. To the point where, even if it's not objectively good, I have to recognize that I like it a lot. I don't really feel comfortable putting it any higher because I like everything else a lot more, but still. It's just adorable, and even if it's kind of boring and unremarkable, I'm glad that it was released and that it exists, because it just makes me happy.
What if
Lavender Town
wasn't the happy-go-lucky place I thought it was?
Okay.
I'll be honest, this is where the list got extremely hard. The next 5 spots changed hands so many times, and honestly, if you asked me tomorrow, I might have completely changed the order here. But this is what I'm going with for the video, so Lavender Town Retold, yay! Anyway, Lavender Town Retold surprised me with how good it was. It does what Dane does usually, having a fine mix of parody and psychological thriller, and its concept is really engaging, seeing Bulbasaur go truly insane this time, losing his mind thanks to not being able to say the name of anything. And Mr. Typhlosion is the best as always. It feels like far less than the sum of its parts, and I feel the ending is less impactful than Dane wanted it to be. It doesn't help that the episode's pacing is super backloaded because of all the DVD reviews. But this does make sense given the episode is trying to make you think that this is just Lavender Town, but every single time they say a Pokemon reference, they would do a DVD. But unfortunately, the most enjoyment I got out of this episode was seeing that Dane had the My Little Pony movie DVD. You're a real one, Dane. Starters Season 1, but only the Galarian Dex, is an episode that I feel more and more positive about the more times I watch it. It's not that long, but the few bits it does have are honestly pretty damn good. It's also fun to finally see a death from rare candy overdose on screen. I always thought the after effect looked gnarly and wished we could see it on screen, which we technically don't actually see it on screen, but, you know, close enough. I mean, I could play this clip.
Is there like invisible Pokemon walking around? That'd be pretty stupid.
I mean, that's pretty funny. Genuinely, though, I don't have anything else to say about it. It's good. I like it.
Stop posting about Among Us! I'm tired of seeing it!
Dr. Sylvie on Discord Gaming, first and only episode Among Us, which is the full title, I think, is really funny. Do I have to talk about the rest of it? Yes, it's objectively really funny, but, like, what else am I supposed to say? I've had a lot of trouble writing these past 2 sections, because, like, I don't just want to list jokes, but, like, what else am I supposed to do? I mean, it's worth noting that Fennekin/Breakson got 0 screen time, Queen robbed yet again, but the short is just one banger joke after another. I guess I should also mention the new animation, which looks absolutely amazing. If Starters were to ever come back for a full-length episode, then I'd want the original style, but I mean, this is pretty cool. Back to the cons, Dr. Sylveon is a character that I feel like only really works in small doses, and his appearance here very much feels like a parody of himself. Sorry if this section's been a little all over the place, by the way. I've been re-watching this short for like an hour trying to come up with a coherent writing, and I could probably go through another draft, but I don't really feel like it, so this is what you're stuck with. Okay, let's move on.
Chespin!
I made the drink. It was difficult to put the pieces together.
Wild Oranberries feels weird, almost forbidden. Probably because it's the only real episode after Rare Candies. And now, I'd feel bad for any episode that had to follow up Rare Candies, because Rare Candies is not only a fantastic ending on its own, but also just a fantastic ending to the entire series. That isn't inherently a flaw with the episode. I think Toy Story 4 did a very great job following up the ending of Toy Story 3, even though I know that's a controversial opinion. And there is a lot to like about this episode as well. Turtwig is a really good and fun antagonist whose perspective on wild versus civilized Pokemon helps the narrative and themes of the episode in a very natural way. Also, the concept of dogfighting in this world makes a lot of sense and, again, incorporates the fact that they're Pokemon into the actual plot, something that they do quite often that I really like. Turtwig acting robotic is also a nice gimmick, despite the fact that Turtwig actually being a robot is not so nice, but we'll get there later. Trust me, we'll get there. But in all seriousness, big props to Just Jaren for doing an amazing job voicing Turtwig. Now on to the non-Turtwig good parts of the episode. The main trio is back, and they're all still in character, so that's great. Scorbunny's kinda cool, I guess. And Totodile's second evolution is there. I don't really think I can comment on it anymore. I don't like them. We also have Tepig still living at Chespin's, which means we get to see more of Chespin. Hooray, hooray! We get to see basically none of how Rare Candies affected him. And Braixen's not in the episode. Why? But either way, it's a nice bit of continuity. Let's see, what else did I like about this episode? Oh yeah, Mr. Typhlosion's back! It's always great when this dumbass pops up in an episode. Now, you may have noticed that I did have a significant amount of good things to say about this episode, as is the nature with these longer episodes. But they were all kind of minor as compared to the bigger problems I actually have with it. Let's start with the fact that I just don't like the usage of Chespin in this episode, even outside of the abhorrent post-credits scene. Chespin is one of my favorite characters in Star Wars in general, mostly because of how complex he is in spite of his seemingly simplistic nature and worldview. Rare Candies does a magnificent job of showing this off and slowly breaking him down until he can't live with himself anymore. So it feels wrong to see him again and he's just the same old optimistic self. You could argue that this takes place like a year or two after Rare Candies, and he's moved on from it since then. But a certain post-credits scene begs to differ. It's also weird that Braixen doesn't appear in this episode. I get that the main trio never really knew her, but given how important she is to Chespin's character and the post-credits scene, it feels weird to not just, have her mentioned. Hell, it could have even been used as foreshadowing to this horrible twist. Maybe a suspiciously short time after Turtwig disappears, Chespin says that he's gonna go hang out at Fennekin's for a while when he's really, fixing Turtwig up or something, I don't know. Also, sorry to any fans of the Feraligatr siblings, but I did not like them at all. The nerd emoji one is kind of just a straight man for Scorbunny, and the other one barely has any lines. Not to mention, they're both jerks, and the episode really only ever punishes Scorbunny, the best of the newly introduced characters, for any of the action performed. So yeah, I don't really like these two. The drone plot device feels a bit cheap, especially after Tepig made that promise to Chespin and Rare Candies. Dude, you said you'd help each other with your problems. Just tell him that you broke his drone, I'm sure he'll understand. Although they are kids, I'm willing to forgive this, as kids make stupid choices all the time. But still. And now for the thing that everybody's been waiting for me to mention. The post-credits scene. I'll be honest, thanks to this fandom not really being that big and me not having any conversations with the people in the fandom, I'm not sure what the general consensus about this ending is. I mean, it really depends on how much you're able to stomach how fan-servicey this is, and if you're okay with the ending of Rare Candies being completely and utterly discarded for no reason other than said fanservice. Because this ending does spit directly in the face of the ending of Rare Candies, right? We all see that, right? It's a very obvious and complete regression of Chespin's character for basically no reason. Chespin was originally the person to report Mudkip to the police, as much as he cared for Mudkip as a friend, I don't think that he'd bring him back to life. Especially considering that, again, the end of Rare Candies has him worried about how Mudkip could have corrupted him. Also, the robotics thing makes no sense. Where the hell did he get the robot parts on this fucking operating table? Whatever, D-tier episode, I like it, but like, it's just dragged down by so much stuff. But I would like to make one thing clear before we move on. For this episode, and for every episode from here on out, I wouldn't judge someone if they said it was their favorite. Yes, I think there are objectively better episodes, but in the end, all opinions are subjective. And Starters is just really good, to the point where a D-tier episode in this show is probably A or S tier in any other piece of media. It's that amazing. Anyway, on to the next episode.
Dude, those animals are so fucking funny, they make me want to merge without looking!
Ditto Disaster is funny and has basically nothing else going for it. Okay, I can explain why I ranked this higher than Wild Oranberries. It's not good on the same objective standard as every other episode, but I can kinda look past that because it's just the most charming thing I've ever seen. Like, I can recognize that this is objectively bad, but I mean, come on, what other episode are you going to get that has Mr. Typhlosion as a main character? Yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah, it's obviously rougher, but that's to be expected from a first entry, especially one made at the age that Dane probably was at the time. It's like on the same level as an amateur plush movie for me. Sure, it's not that good necessarily, but gosh darn it just makes me want to pat the kid who made it on the head and tell him they did a good job. I may have been more quote-unquote invested in other Starters episodes, but this is the only one where I was smiling practically the whole way through, and that's gotta be worth something. Still, I don't feel comfortable placing it any higher than this, and the only reason it's even above Wild Oranberries is because of the Arceus Forsaken post-credits scene. Fuck. The episode also has a through line of Tepig, although he doesn't really go through a character arc like a certain episode we'll get to later. He more just kinda, you know, is there and gets bullied and then he stops being bullied. Insert fucking Toy Bonnie Cool. The cool that Toy Bonnie does. The cool.
Let's make the Q a unit of measure.
But fuck the A plot. Let's talk about the B plot because oh my god, Mr. Typhlosion is the only thing that matters. Typhlosion, as well as the namesake Dittos, but we'll get to those later, are the best parts of this episode by far and completely make it worth watching. Not every joke with Typhlosion lands for me, but the ones that do genuinely made me chuckle. He's so stupid and immature, and you can't help but love him. He reminds me a lot of early season Timmy Turner's dad from Fairly OddParents, which is an absolute compliment. Also, call me immature, but the blood on Mr. Typhlosion's hand after he rubs his penis made me chuckle. I know it's basic shock humor, but I laughed, sue me. The Dittos themselves are also amazing, with their ability to shapeshift being cool, but not overused. In fact, some would argue it's underused. The Dittos motto is pretty rough, especially around the hands, but for the Big Ditto, there's just, again, something charming about it. And all three uses of the shapeshifting ability are fun, one being a good joke, one being an actually clever twist, and another being a kind of obvious twist, but I don't know, it's still cool. But on to probably the biggest issue with the episode. It suffers hard from early internet edginess. And not that I can blame it for that, but it still just kinda bogs down the whole episode if you're not in the right headspace for it. I mean, it's not the worst I've seen anything do of this. Puggo and Pony MOV take the cake on that one, and one of those was made recently. I think the biggest reason I can't place this any higher, though, is because of, okay, well, yeah, one, the internet edginess, but two, the other episodes just have a different goal, and that's to make me feel something. And while not all of the episodes coming up fully succeed at that, particularly if I had things fully opinion-based, I would swap this one and the next one, but Meanwhile, Ditto Disaster's main goal is just to make you laugh, and it succeeds relatively well at that. So, yep.
Why would you think any of this was a good idea?
Probably because I'm a dangerous sociopath with a long history of violence.
Oh.
I don't understand how you keep forgetting that.
I'll be honest with you, this is where the ranking gets tough. I had a pretty good idea of where I'd place everything up until now, and I still completely agree with my list, even now as I'm recording this after, like, a year. I'm not joking. But from here, my opinions get far more lucid, and all of these have held at least second place at some point. As for why I have to specify they've all held second place at some point, yeah, Typomaniac's never been my favorite. I think it suffers from the worst pacing of any Starters episode. Fennekin is basically the main character, but watching it, I get the feeling that Dane liked writing Chespin and Mudkip much more. Again, Fennekin is basically our protagonist, and she's not even part of the climax. The result is an episode that feels like it's not even really about anything. Which is a damn shame, especially when you consider that Fennekin could have really used that screen time here. Not that she doesn't get it, necessarily, just that she doesn't capitalize on it in the way I'd want for how much I like her character. I mean, generally speaking, the story makes great use of its concepts. And Mudkip is a villain that constantly feels like he's a step ahead of Fennekin during every single move he makes. Also, Chespin gets basically no screen time this episode, which sucks for how much of a well-rounded character he is, and considering he is the one that's directly responsible for the villain's defeat. But given what he ended up getting later, I can kind of excuse this. And talking about Mudkip, his defeat feels very anticlimactic for how much it's built up. Even though I find it very cool and fitting in retrospect to know that Chespin is the one that turned him in, this isn't in Typomaniac, so I can't really give it points for that. Again though, Mudkip himself feels like he's constantly one step ahead of both the audience and Fennekin. It makes you really wonder how he's going to be defeated, which is a really fun feeling on a first watch. But God, even if these characters are kinda weak individually this episode, together they are amazing. Like, how can you not love this?
Nothing like that, you fuckwad! Wow! Wow!
How do you not love these guys? Also, Chespin and Fennekin are just so cute together. I usually don't buy this kind of love at first sight story where the two characters meet once and suddenly they're in love. But somehow, MovieUnleashers completely sells it here. I am fully invested in their relationship, and I'm very glad when it kind of pretty much works out by the end. Even on a rewatch, I find myself hoping that their relationship works out. And even though the pacing is a little wonky, again, as I've established, this is Starters. It's all good. Many of the scenes are done amazingly, especially early on. Namely, everything from the alleyway to the hospital is peak Starters. Although I think the hallucination scenes are a bit much, but the alleyway scenes are so good and hit so perfectly. And the scene at the end with Chespin and Mudkip talking, for how much I've said it's kind of anticlimactic and stupid that Fennekin isn't really here, it's still done amazingly. The way Mudkip's mask slips for a second and we see that, yeah, he is still just a child. Despite all my complaints, though, these are honestly all nitpicks. The episode overall is still great. I just think it's far more interesting to talk about what's bad about this episode than what's good about it, because, I mean, how else am I supposed to say I like the character dynamics? I already had to say that like 2 billion times in the Lion Guard video. Which you should totally watch, by the way. I put literal years worth of effort into it. I cannot stress enough, though, that this episode was number 2 on my list for a substantial amount of time. But the other 3 episodes just beat it out, thanks to me having less general problems with them overall. Still, love this episode and totally recommend it to literally anyone, especially if you plan on watching Rare Candies after.
What if
Lavender Town
wasn't the happy-go-lucky place I thought it was?
Okay, I'll admit I might be placing this one a little bit higher than it deserves, but gosh darn it, I like creepypastas. Lavender Town is a really good episode, and the only episode of the series that focuses on the horror aspect that all other episodes have hints of, but none really capitalize on. most opting to be a thriller instead. I think it handles these horror aspects really well. This really does feel like some old horror story you'd be told to bed to be, encouraged to eat your vegetables or something. And all of the episode's twists are really well done and make sense if you're actively following them. If you do lose it though, you have no hope, I'm sorry. Even outside of that though, the main trio's dynamics with each other are amazing. Bulbasaur being at the center of attention, which is good because Ditto Disaster was a Cyndaquil episode and Out in the Rain is a Tepig episode. And hey, Cyndaquil's character hasn't become entirely hinged on one really good line this episode, so, he's good in scenes other than that one. We'll get to it. Also, Tepig is funny and naturally adventurous, making him the perfect person to instigate the, conflict? I guess he doesn't really instigate the conflict. That more happens between Hypno and all of that stuff. Oh, and speaking of Hypno, he's handled wonderfully this episode. You're completely put in Bulbasaur's shoes, and you completely understand why he doesn't trust him. The tea scene is extremely suspenseful, despite the fact that nothing has actually happened yet to warrant anything. And I think a lot of it really does come down to Hypno's amazing vocal performance. He really does steal the show to the point where I almost wish he was actually the villain. Or at least that the rest of the Ghost Town had good voice acting. They are funny sometimes, though.
Ouch.
But even so, that doesn't take away from the fact that Hypno himself is amazing this episode. Even if he's still very morally wrong, he's easy to root for against these literal child murderers. Oh, and speaking of those child murderers, I really like the roller coaster scene. To the point where, again, I wish it was the climax of the episode because things kinda taper off from there. I mean, I like the car chase, and the end reveal with Hypno is fun, but man, I kinda wanted to see this thing go off, right? But that's basically the only complaint I have with this episode. It's really good other than that. It's certainly not going to be for everyone. If you don't like big, windy plots with a billion things going on, you're not going to be a fan. But, it's still worth watching in my opinion, especially as the first episode of Starters. Do not start with Ditto Disaster like I did. It's charming, but like save it for later. Oh yeah, I should also probably mention that Mr. Typhlosion's in it and he gets the two best jokes of the episode. As per usual. Go off, King.
Jirachi, get rid of the problem! Get rid of problem? Okay. She's gone!
I'll be honest, this might somehow be a hot take. Because most people I've talked to has this as their favorite episode. Not for me, for a single issue I have with it that I'll get to later, but still. Out in the Rain is absolutely deserving of the title of Best Episode if it wasn't for another thing that came along later. Which, if you've watched Starters, you already know what it is, but just let me talk about Out in the Rain. This episode does what Ditto Disaster wanted to do with Tepig, and just does it infinitely better. But even before we get to any of that cool thematic stuff, we genuinely get one of my favorite scenes in all of Starters, which is Tepig's death. I genuinely think this scene is amazing, and one of a couple contenders for best scene in all of Starters in this episode. The fact that they chose to have no dialogue play over this, the fact that his friends helped set up this cabin that turned into his coffin later, God, this entire first act just feels like a really good short film. And just when it's over, the star of the goddamn show arrives. We're talking about Jirachi. I was tempted to do a bit where I could see how long I could go without talking about him, but fuck that, man. I just want to talk about Jirachi. First off, his vocal performance is absolutely stellar for what the character is. When given a character like Jirachi, you're tempted to give him a more high-pitched, cutesy voice. But the choice to go with this deep, sort of chill guy voice is absolutely perfect for the kind of person he is. He just doesn't care about anyone. And the only reason he even gets involved with these kids in the first place is for fun. So when things start going awry and he reveals the true strength of his power, everything starts getting really scary really fast. Yet he simultaneously holds the moniker of the second funniest character in the entire series. Seriously, it's been almost a year since I first watched this series and I still have not stopped saying,
Where are you, you meaty motherfucker?
I think I have a fucking Jirachi-shaped RFK brainworm. Everything else I want to say about Jirachi pertains to the climax, so I'll save that for later and instead talk about the negatives. This won't take too long. One single problem I have with this episode that stopped it from being my favorite is that the courtroom scene goes on too long. Yes, this is how good this series is. These are the kind of hairs I have to split to make these decisions. I was ready for it to be over like 5 minutes before it was, and it got boring, and it completely put my sibling to sleep. No, literally, we were watching it together, and they fell asleep because of how long the courtroom scene was. Admittedly, they were already tired, and again, it only went on for like 5 minutes longer than it needed to, as opposed to like 10 or 20, but still. Okay, that's it, back onto the positives. The episode's second biggest strength by far is everything they do with Tepig and his dad. Tepig at first seems like he's being kind of annoying about this whole thing, but what really makes his presence so good in the episode is the obvious. After he's killed a second time, he is sent to the afterlife with this weird title card bit. Okay, this is the only other negative I have about the episode. I don't like this singular bit, but anyway. And Tepig literally meets God. Like Arceus God. And Tepig asks a simple question. Throughout the entire court case scene, Cyndaquil and Bulbasaur kept saying that they didn't wish Tepig back to life. So Tepig asks who did. And Arceus shows him. I don't know if I can put into words what's so good about this scene. But I'll try. The fact that Tepig's dad both wishes Tepig back to life and himself out of existence, admittedly by accident on that second one, is so hard-hitting in a way that's kind of hard to describe. And it would be one thing if the episode told you how to feel about this, like a lot of media does when it presents you with a difficult choice like this. But no, Tepig's reaction is very realistically nuanced, where he doesn't want to forgive his dad, but I mean, he brought him back to life. Struggles that Tepig is dealing with is very bad, and immediately makes you feel zero sympathy for Tepig's dad, who I'll call Embor from here on out, because it's getting annoying to say Tepig's dad. But Embor himself also has struggles that are leading to him acting like this. He is a victim, but just a victim that couldn't break the cycle. And that's sad. And the episode doesn't have a cushy moral for you to fall back on. You're left with this revelation and essentially told there's not a right answer, feel how you want to. It's so emotionally impactful. The fact that it takes place as essentially the climax of the episode, despite being a flashback, is really clever. Because this is the most emotionally hard-hitting part of the episode. It feels like the climax. Even if, technically, Jirachi is quote-unquote defeated in both the scene before and after. Which, speaking of Jirachi's defeat, this is another contender for best scene in all of Starters, along with the previously mentioned Embor stuff.
Prove to me that you are a god.
This is one of the hardest lines I have ever seen in any piece of media. By this point, Jirachi had been tormenting the kids, and he decides that he just wants to be done with it. He says he'll send these two kids back up to the world, but Cyndaquil holds his ground and says that he wants Tepig back too. When Jirachi says he can't do that, Cyndaquil essentially goads his ego into collapsing the universe. This collapsing of the universe leads to Arceus needing to personally intervene, which is just such a perfect defeat for this villain. Some may think at first that, oh, the characters didn't really do anything, the universe crashed and then Arceus came in. But no. Cyndaquil very much recognized that Jirachi is fueled by ego, and used that to his advantage to create a situation where either Jirachi's ego is completely damaged by this child, or he gets his friend back. Admittedly, he didn't anticipate the world ending, but it ended up leading to an even better scenario where Jirachi loses his powers. And the fact that he can't even move by himself without his powers is so thematically satisfying for his character. Because, yeah, without his powers, he's nothing. Just a crying baby, which is essentially all he's reduced to. It is so good. And everything in the episode is wrapped up in such a neat little bow that just makes me love every single solitary thing about it. Anything else I need to mention before I move on to the number one spot? Oh yeah. I love Giratina and his goth-fat mom. We stan Giratina and his goth-fat mom. Rare Candies is a piece of media that genuinely and utterly shocks me to my core. It takes everything that was great about Typomaniac, and there was a lot great about it, and cranks it up to 11. Rare Candies being a drug for Pokemon is not at all an original concept. But the episode takes this relatively small idea and has a complete field day with it, by absolutely obliterating poor little Chespin's heart at every turn of the plot. Chespin in this episode is done perfectly. The entire plot revolves around one question: can he be morally corrupted? The episode does this without the viewer ever feeling the hands of fate being placed upon the plot. Everything Chespin does in this episode makes sense. Every single word he speaks makes sense. Both Mudkip and Fennekin give him perspectives on the scenario that stick with him. Mudkip and Fennekin themselves are also done amazingly, thus being completely robbed of breaks in screen time, TBH. And, well, we'll get to Mudkip later. But back to Chespin. Fennekin provides Chespin the motive to do everything he does in this episode, and also provides something to lose. He loves Fennekin, and Fennekin loves him, but thanks to Fennekin's insecurities, and later Chespin's, they can't be together. At least, not until they get over their own insecurities. It's something they'd have to work on together, and by the end of the episode, I have complete faith in them, despite the odds. Mudkip, who I'll get to more later, provides Chespin a cold, cynical take on the life he's lived up until now. But after Chespin reveals that he's the one who turned Mudkip in on the basis of, well, everything he does, shit really hits the fan. Speaking of Mudkip, everything he does in this episode is perfectly done as well. It makes sense why he'd fold to Chespin getting injured. It makes sense why for him, freedom would equal death. And it makes sense that it was all a ploy for actual freedom with Chespin. And I'm just gonna come out and say it, I think Mudkip's death scene is the best scene in all of Starters. It does have some steep competition, but every single time I hear that shotgun and watch his body go limp, it's genuine chills. Especially right after drilling the seed into Chespin that he made the wrong choices over and over again. But of course, we wouldn't get that scene without someone to hold the gun. And by God, Dr. Sylveon is the perfect man to do it. He's the best villain in the series by far. So much so that he even got a spin-off episode, which I covered, and recently a feature in DDS. I genuinely still can't believe he came back right before I finished recording this. Dr. Sylveon's only competition in the best villain race is the funniest man on planet Earth, but with what Dr. Sylveon lacks in humor, he makes up for in presence. Dr. Sylveon is the perfect foil to Chespin. While Chespin does everything in his power to be a good person while beating himself up about every wrong choice he makes, Dr. Sylveon is actively a bad person, but commends his own actions by egotistically justifying it to himself. It's perfect. He also fits great into the episode's themes of changing and growing up and loss that the episode's going for. I don't mind that Dr. Sylveon doesn't end up getting defeated because it makes sense with the themes of the episode. Dr. Sylveon, on top of just being a generally manipulative presence, also represents the unmovable force that change is inevitable. Dr. Sylveon is the best villain in the series for me, and it's not even close. It's not just because of his character, which is admittedly amazing, but because of what he represents in the themes. All of this without even mentioning Mudkip's villain is present in the episode. Well, he isn't as big as he was in Typomaniac. This episode still works wonderfully, and his plan to escape makes complete sense. Honestly, when Mudkip gets shot here, I think that's the true villain defeat of this episode. In this moment, Chespin shows Mudkip that he's never going to be like him. And it's just so nice to see after watching Chespin bend over backwards to continue being Mudkip's friend. And it also makes the wild Oranberries thing feel even more stupid, but we're talking about a good episode right now. And oh my god, the scene at the end is so heartbreaking, dude. The line, "I don't want to talk to you, I want to talk to Fennekin," is so heartbreaking to the point where it literally sends a chill up my spine when I hear it. Yes, I know that's the second time I've said that, but it's true, damn it! This line hits so close to home, and I was so shocked that it originally came from who I considered to be my least favorite main character. Seriously, this episode is just the best. A full deconstruction of a character that, up until now, we had really only seen one or two sides of. And it also just personally speaks to me a lot. It's sad and disheartening to watch people fall into these habits, and Braixen is just a great example of how somebody can fall into substance use by being pressured by the outside world and wanting to seem more adult. Both things that I've seen firsthand with people I'm close with. Man, Braixen's my favorite character. We were so robbed of getting more. But also, the episode is perfectly paced as it is. I know I say, quote, "we got robbed," but I don't think you could fit any more Braixen in this episode. Because, genuinely, I can't think of a single flaw. And I mean, if that doesn't deserve the top of the list, I don't know what could. Even if Dane goes on to make future Starters episodes, and even if they're good, I doubt anything will ever live up to the masterpiece that is Rare Candies. So, that was my list and opinions. All in all, I love Starters, and I came out of this series with a genuine admiration for the series and its creator. Well, it wasn't perfect, it had its flaws. It was insane how consistent the quality was for the main episodes. I'm also very happy looking at my list and where I ended up placing everything. It took me a while to decide where everything would go, but I'm happy with this. Although it's completely fine if you disagree. My words are not gospel. I've shown this series to multiple different people now, and I've gotten multiple different answers for which one they think is the best. I've gotten Typomaniac, Out in the Rain, obviously Rare Candies is my favorite. But which one is your favorite? Let me know down in the comments. I've also got consistently different answers on who each person's favorite character is. I've heard Bulbasaur, Mudkip, Dr. Sylveon, Chespin, motherfucking Chikorita, who I didn't even get the chance to bring up in this video because she's a side character. And again, I like Braixen. Either way, though, it doesn't really matter to me what your opinion is, so long as you watched through the video and enjoy it. And then you can, like it or do whatever you want to push it harder in the algorithm. Maybe next time you go to sleep, rewatch the video at 0.25 speed. That would be really nice. But anyway, yeah. Anyway, I suppose that's the end of my video. Dislike, unsubscribe, leave as many comments as you possibly can, and as always... what's a funny Stardust quote I can say? I'm being touched.